story we did about how all of these Florida cities are raising taxes and has nothing to do with the property tax debate. So let me give you the backdrop. About once or twice a year, we do a story at Florida Daily of not Democrats, but Republican deep red run counties like Escambia. That's where Pensacola is. Okay? 60% Trump, 60% DeSantis. Oh, and by the way, we 60% are voting to raise taxes locally. I'm like, or St. Johns County, 65% Trump, DeSantis. Oh, but we don't like school teachers. Excuse me. We don't like the teacher unions, excuse me. But every time the teachers unions, oh, we got to raise the tax for the kids, for the schools, they vote in favor of it. Brevard County, and by the way, it's been actually more blue counties that are actually opposing some of the new tax increases. So we did a story, Port St. Lucie, my show syndicated down there. They can't wait to jack up developer fees because developers haven't been paying their fair share. You got more developers building down there, and you're telling me that growth isn't paying for itself. Glades County, which is votes Republican, they got growth, more revenue. Again, has nothing to do with the property tax. They're jacking up by $10,000 a pop on impact fees. By the way, you, the consumer, will have to pay for that as if you want to own a home or a business. Then Apopka, that city just announced that they're going to jack up your property taxes by 10%. Then Flagler County in North Florida, heavy Republican. Palm Coast, which just jacked up 75% of impact fees, I think it was for parks. Yeah. Just jacked up 100%, excuse me, on the fire and police fees. And then they were jacking up another one. A judge came back and said, this is too much. You're excessive regulations. The point that I'm getting at, Matt, is that not only does the city and the taxpayer has to pay for the new taxes from the city, then they got to pay for the new tax increases from the county. And then all these local communities have their own little redevelopment. Oh, my word, getting taxed enough. And yet this has nothing to do with the property tax, which to me is not a tax cut, it's a tax shift. Matt, when the argument comes back and says we're taxing too much locally, we're spending too much, there is a valid excuse for that, of the argument for that.
Oh, sure, especially when you mentioned Apopka. Oh. And just recently, there was a lot of headlines locally because their public information officer, Trooper Steve, as he's known, former Florida Highway Patrol officer, and he used to work for Channel 6. They just hired him as their public information officer for the city, and he's making $180,000. That is far more than paramedics and even some physicians make. So why are we paying?
That's more than the who's not even.
That's someone who's not even the mayor. Yeah. And just basically their PR spin doctor, and they're giving him almost.
They're making Fauci money.
Wow.
You know,
well, Fauci would have made more in the.
By the way, for the most part, lately, I've seen it in Orlando, Duval, and Popka, Seminole County, Brevard. Every public information officer is a former news reporter. How
that makes sense.
And by the way, they're making more from the government than they did in the private sector.
Yeah, that's what's the crazy part is. It makes sense that they have a background in news, but it just goes to show you how out of control these budgets are when they're giving these guys more than they were making for broadcast news affiliates. Something's wrong.
Right.
And they're going to sit there and pay them that much money and then tell these first responders, hey, we can't afford this property tax break. And right. Same thing at the county level. It's all nonsense, and everyone knows it. You could hire an intern you could hire a recent college grad and pay them $50,000 a year, and they'd be happy to have that job and all of its benefits.
You could pay Lindsay. Lindsay out there cut jokes, tell some funny stories up there, like it's deaf comedy.
Lindsay's not the Apopka type. She's more of the Winter Park crowd, right?
The what?
I think so.
You're the Winter Park crowd.
I'm the Winter Park crowd.
Isleworth. Yeah.
Agreed. Lindsay, so this over the last couple of weeks, so we had another story come out this week. So the FOP, very conservative fraternal order police, the Florida Sheriff's Association, all the first responders have said, forget this. We're not supporting the property tax. I mean, Grady Judd, who I come on my show, I love Grady. But Grady goes, it was horrible. He really threw it under the bus. And every county's from what I see, your most popular elected official, your most powerful, the most popular, let's just say it that way, is your sheriff. And when your sheriff's coming out against the property tax, and he's going to tell you it's going to cut, I don't know how they weigh it out, because I've seen property tax cuts and property increases, and I don't know if that determines the slowness or the quickness of a first responder. No one's ever answered that question for me, but they claim it's not going to be good. They're going to have to cut back. They're going to have to lay off. I mean, do you buy it? I mean, there are going to be some government services going to get hit, but when the sheriff's department's coming out saying this isn't a good thing, this is going to hit us, how do you react?
Well, no one can tell me that there's not waste, fraud, and abuse running rampant in some, if not most, of the big cities in our state. So that's number one. So it's like, let's audit those. And what's not sexy to talk about is spending cuts. It's really fun to talk about tax cuts. We're like, oh, let's get rid of this tax and this tax and this tax, make us freer. That's wonderful. However, at the end of the day, you have to cut spending alongside that. And I'm sorry, these cities, they don't want to cut spending. I don't blame them. You wouldn't want to cut spending from your own household. But at the end of the day, they are supposed to be public servants, and they are entrusted with our money to do good. So just in my hometown in Jacksonville, since 2019, our general fund has increased by 61%. Do you know how much of our population has grown since then? Only 10%. So that does not equate to what should have been increased in that general fund. So where's it all going? I'm not exactly sure, but you cannot tell me that there's not things that can be cut in that. And I agree, like all the, police and fire rescue, those are services we cannot afford to lose. However, let's not look at that to cut. Let's look at these other departments that we can trim the fat.
And I just got to tack on to that, Ed, because she mentioned a great point there. How no one wants to talk about cutting spending or cutting jobs. And in the Orange County mayoral debate, they're the Orange County chair. They just use a different name. But Maya Uribe was the only one up there who talked about actually cutting jobs and saying, yeah, we're going to have to cut some jobs here in Orange County. And she's by no means a Republican. Right. No one else would actually say those words because they're so worried that if they say they're going to cut jobs, it'll be the end of the world. Who knows what reality is? They have to. You have to cut jobs.
Let me ask you a question. So we had a story that recently came out that even some Florida Democrats, they know that people want property tax relief. They may not want this one, but they want it. You got Charlie Crist, who's going to become your next mayor of St. Pete. He's advocating cutting property taxes. He's a Democrat going after the other Democrat for spending so much money. Charlie, really? And then you got, is it Levon Cava, who's the Miami-Dade mayor? And
she's nuts.
And she's out there bragging about cutting property taxes and cutting spending. So let me start with you first, Matt. If you were going to be, as a voter, and knowing that it's probably going to be different from Jacksonville to maybe Orlando to a rural county. If a mayor comes out, Republican or Democrat, and says, fire and police, if you buy into that, the arts, now follow me now, public parks and swimming pools and lifeguards, out of all of those I just mentioned, which one do you think would resonate less, and which one will resonate more? I think the fire and police will resonate more, but what I'm saying is that, we're going to have to cut parks. We're going to have to cut back the arts. Does that really sell with a lot of voters?
Does that sell as far as?
We got to vote against the property tax because we may have to cut some parks. We may
the
funding for arts may not take place.
Their first responder area is going to hit the hardest. And I think the biggest blow to that was when you had Grady Judd, like you mentioned, because he's probably the second most popular person in all of Florida behind DeSantis. Everybody loves Grady Judd. I mean, I don't know.
He was a guy.
He is the face of law enforcement in this state, whether we want to admit it or not. He is, from a public perception wise. And he came out and said, "Hey, this is bad for first responders." And if I'm an independent voter who just kind of listens to well-known guys like him and don't really dig into the details, that's going to have some sway. I'm not saying it'll change their vote, but I think this vote's going to come down much closer than some people expect it to.
What do you think, Lindsay? I mean, take away our conservatism and our partisan. Because I tell people all the time, by the way, let me throw in libraries. I forgot to mention that one.
Yeah.
Because when I talk about how we don't need new libraries, and you'd be surprised, NPR can raise money locally. They don't need government money. You would be surprised. I tell this to a boatload of people when on my radio show. I probably get just as much hate mail from Republicans on libraries, and NPR. Republicans like NPR just as much, and they like libraries. I would cut funding to NPR. I would cut government funding to the parks and certainly to the arts and libraries. But does that still sell or not?
Well, it's August now. There's so much time in between now and the election. I don't know what else is going to come out. I don't think there's anybody, like if the governor, if this was his plan and he was out there in the public, really raising hay and saying like, this is what we need. And there was somebody that was like a force to be reckoned with behind this, I think it would be a slam dunk. Yeah. I don't know. I think it will pass. I do. That's my gut. But I think it will be a very slim margin. And I think because I don't think the affordability issue, like that's going to be top with everybody, with most voters, I think, especially families. And at the end of the day, we want more money in our pockets and we feel taxed to the nines. I mean, just the grocery bills alone are just sending people into orbit, sending them into more debt. Gas prices are not being, coming down. And this Iran war is not helping all this stuff. So at the end of the day, people are going to be selfish, I think, and they're going to vote for what's going to give them more money in their pocket.
People vote with their wallet, that's for sure.
They do.
And no one's going to Publix anymore. Did you guys see that? Publix has lost tons of customers this year because now the people are going to Aldi's and other places because they can't afford it.
Well, I'm going to Aldi's, I'm going to Trader Joe's, Costco, and I go to Publix occasionally, but their prices are just so much.
That's what we call their BOGO deals. Trader Joe's.
My wife jokes that Publix is my target because I say I'm just going to Publix for a little bit and I can never spend less than $50. Those BOGOs suck you in.
The BOGOs.
I go to Publix.
It's a trick though. They really just double priced it. And they're like, oh, I'm saying, no, I'm serious. Well, never going to get Publix lover hate mail, but
I prefer Publix. When I show up there, where shopping is your pleasure, not mine. So
maybe you'll get a sponsorship.
Sam's, Publix.
Sam's is chaos, man.
I know Sam's and Costco.
I love Costco.
Sam's at hurricane time is a sight to behold, man. Let me tell you.
And Home Depot, goodness.
Or when gasoline prices were at $4 a gallon, I'm like, man,
and the stuff
at Disney.
Yeah, and the stuff we're talking about, this that we're talking about right now, this is what people really care about, and
I know.
That's not going to
work. But they all want to blame Biden. I'm like, guys, as bad as the worst
Democrats
president, you can't keep blaming Biden on this one.
Or saying it's not as bad as when Biden was. It's still bad.
Yeah,
you can't say it's not as bad because it still feels just as bad to middle class America.
Or the other one is, this is what we've been hearing on the radio show. Well, if we didn't have the war in Iran, hold on. As much as the mullahs should have been taken, who started the bombing? Or excuse me, who started the war? It's going to end in 6 weeks? Now it's 6 months. Bombing them was one thing, but going down further, the no new wars, and that wasn't Iran. That was President. It's just the way it is. I'm just being honest. It was President Trump.
I do think it's unfair when people try to say that, well, if it wasn't for the Iran war, there'd be money for this. The bottom line is the Pentagon money is completely separate. We need to get into more nuance and detail when it comes to these things, but people don't like to do that. But if you're going to make decisions when you're voting, you got to be able to know the difference between two.
I've been everybody's therapist on the radio, and I tell everybody, you're all just sitting on my couch. I've explained to people, do not put me in the position of defending Biden. He was the worst president. Biden had record stock numbers, okay? Biden had record military spending that Republicans agreed with. So when Pete Hegseth and these guys start going out there, and I'm just telling you, it's just the way Biden cut the military. No, he didn't cut the military. And by the way, the funding for Ukraine was with the supplementals that the Republicans voted in favor. Had nothing to do with the current thing going on right now. We already paid for all that stuff to replenish the arms. We're on look at our oil. We're at the lowest inventory since 83. And our arms, we've got to replenish all that as well. Yeah. You can't keep blaming Biden here. It doesn't sell.
Well, there's also plenty of domestic reform. Before we start even talking about Iran, to me, that's a distraction when it comes to spending. There's plenty of areas within domestic spending that need to be improved. Yeah. So let's talk about that instead of,
And deregulation.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Where's my cowboy hat? All right, Neil, hold on a second.
Get that hat back on.
You like that, Lindsay?
I love it.
I need
the real American hero right there.
I'll use a toothpick. That's right. All right.
Yeah.
Don't forget to like our YouTube page, subscribe, and everything related. Facebook like that as well. Thank you so much. Everything's at FloridaDaily.com. That's FloridaDaily.com.